Hello disciples, Donkey here, and today we'll be going over my indestructible Titan build using the Solar subclass. In short, this build allows for maximum melee damage, all while you constantly regenerate health. I have found that this build works for just about everything in Destiny 2, from strikes to nightfalls, dungeons, and raids. The basic idea is that you get a kill with your throwing hammer melee to proc a ton of buffs and then keep throwing it over and over till everything is burnt to a crisp. Here is the setup. Your super is Hammer of Soul, melee is the throwing hammer, grenade is the healing grenade, and for aspects, use Roaring Flames and Soul Invictus. The fragments you can use here are Ember of Singeing, Solace, Torches, and Empyrean. For armor mods, on your helmet, equip Harmonic Siphon and Well of Life. For the arms, you can use Impact Induction and a second Well of Life. The chest piece will have Elemental Time Dilation. For the legs, equip Absolution and Melee Wellmaker. And lastly, for the class item, have Font of Might. You can also run Solo Operative if you are by yourself, or Monochromatic Mastro if you are playing with friends. The stat mods can be anything you want, but I would definitely suggest trying for at least 100 Resilience and 100 Discipline. But anything will work. And any other mods or specific artifact mods are just icing on the cake at this point, so they can be anything your heart desires. For exotic gear, equip Syntheseps for your armor, and use either Sleeper or Gallahorn for your weapon. Other weapons can be anything with Incandescent, or even a shotgun with 1-2 punch. Sleeper and Gallahorn are not totally necessary, but they work as good boss DPS weapons. My current loadout is a 1-2 punch shotgun, an incandescent trace rifle, and sleeper. But our main weapon will be the throwing hammer. So let's dive into how all this works. The first step is to get a kill with your melee, which will do 3 things: spawn a solar well, activate Roaring Flames, and create a sunspot with Soul Invictus. Standing in sunspots will give you an increased regen to all of your abilities and your super drains slower. It will also scorch targets and damages enemies that walk through them, and it grants restoration when standing in the sunspot. From that single sunspot, you are getting 5 different benefits, which is already nuts. Secondly, because you get a kill with the solar ability, your damage increases for all solar abilities by 1 stack per kill, up to 3 stacks, thanks to Roaring Flames. And if for some reason you throw your hammer and miss, your uncharged melee will deal solar damage and it will scorch targets per hit. Now keep all that in mind as we move into the fragments. Ember of Torches grants Radiant to you and allies nearby when you damage an enemy with a powered melee attack. Simply throw your hammer, and whether it kills the target or not, you will get the Radiant buff. Ember of Solace will give you increased duration to Radiant and Restoration buffs. Ember of Empyrean will refresh the Radiant and Restoration buffs per solar kill with guns or melee. And lastly, Ember of Singeing gives you increased class ability regen when you scorch targets. Now when you pick up the Solar Well from the melee hit, it will grant you Font of Might for a damage boost, and most importantly, Well of Life for constant health regen. You can also use your healing grenade anytime your health gets really low to instantly grant you Cure and Restoration. So that's the build in a nutshell, but if you want to stick around a little bit longer, we're going to get into the finer details of percentages and numbers for all you min-max stat nerds out there. So let's start with the aspects. Roaring Flames grants ability damage up to 3 stacks per kill at 20%, 44%, and 73%. This lasts for 20 seconds. Now since we are running Syntheseps, this buff is decreased whenever the Biotic Enhancement perk is active. So the new numbers would be 10%, 21%, and 33%. Now that is a decent drop to damage, but I still think it is worth it when that perk activates because you are getting 233% increased melee damage instead of 73%. Additionally, melee hits without the hammer when Roaring Flames is still active grants 30 Scorch stacks per hit and counts as powered melee hits. The Scorch stacks do not apply to the throwing hammer. So all of that just comes from one aspect. Secondly, Soul Invictus will create sunspots from ability kills, scorched enemy kills, and Hammer of Soul impacts. The Sunspot will grant 1 stack of Restoration and 100% grenade and melee regen for 5 seconds. Restoration is a buff that allows you to constantly heal at 20 health a second at 1 stack and 32 health a second at 2 stacks. Sunspots also deal 60 damage and apply 5 scorch stacks per tick, and it will tick 6 times per second, all while lasting 5 seconds on the ground. Now that's a lot of damage. Then we move on to our fragments. Ember of Torches makes yourself and allies within 8 meters radiant for 8 seconds when you get a powered melee hit. Radiant simply increases weapon damage by 25%. Ember of Solace allows for radiant and restoration buffs to be 50% longer in duration. Ember of Empyrean extends those same buffs by 4 seconds per solar kill, up to a max of 12 seconds. And lastly, Ember of Singeing grants 300% class ability regen for 3 seconds after applying Scorch. Now on to the armor mods and perks. Our main boosters will come from the Well mods. Well of Life restores 13 health per second for 11 seconds, and because we have elemental time dilation and 2 copies of Well of Life, that timer is increased to 17 seconds. Then we have Font of Might for a 25% increased weapons damage, and that will last for 14 seconds thanks to elemental time dilation. Melee Wellmaker generates our solar well to be picked up for all of those buffs. Solo Operative also gives us a flat 15% damage buff as well. Then our exotic Syntheseps gives us a 200% melee damage buff for 8 seconds when we are surrounded by 3 enemies. For the guns, our shotgun is 1-2 punch, which gives us a 40% melee damage buff to most common enemies and a 25% buff to bosses. Incandescent applies 30 scorch stacks to enemies within 4 meters after a kill. And finally, Sleeper is just, well, Sleeper. It's stupid good. Well, that was ridiculously long. I hope you all enjoyed the wealth of knowledge that is in this video. Oh, and I forgot to mention that picking up your throwing hammer after getting a hit with it grants Cure, which instantly heals 20 health. Now that's the cherry on top. Well, that should do it for this build video. Let me know down in the comments if you want to see any other builds for future videos, and be sure to subscribe for more Destiny 2 content, and we will see you in the next one.